So I was in the bookstore recently with one of my friends, and she bought this book. And then she borrowed it to me to read it, and I intend to give it back soon because it's unpolite to keep books for a very long time. So I thought I would make a quick review on this because this actually helped me a lot. I mean, I can really recommend it. It is the Jane Austen Handbook, Proper Life Skills from Regency England by Margaret Sullivan. And at first I thought that this might be a bit too simple because it has all these pictures. It looks a bit like a kid's book in regards to layout. But I was surprised there were many things in it that I didn't know. And sometimes it was just repetition of things that I already knew, but in a new context. So I understood something better that I thought that I had understood already. So it's definitely good for beginners. For example, if you start getting into Jane Austen and you don't really get the manners of the time, this might help you because it's written in a very simple way and it explains in such a great detail everything that you need to know, but at the same time it has something for experts in it too. For example, did you know that the title of Pride and Prejudice is actually a phrase that Jane Austen borrowed from a novel called Cecilia, because her first title, First Impressions, was already taken by the time she wanted to publish the manuscript. Didn't know that before. And so you have very interesting things here. Everything's explained, sometimes with little pictures, like how to knit a purse, how to do embroidery, how a lady might spend her leisure time, how to marry off your daughters. Then explained who died and made Mr. Collins the heir of Longbourn, like the entailment issue addressed. A lady's education, a gentleman's education. Then you have a big chapter on dress, and you also have pretty little pictures again. You have every layer explained, what you would wear when someone died. Then you have this about women's underwear. I'm going to read this out to you very quickly. I hope I don't mess up. Ladies generally did not wear drawers in Jane Austen's day. After all, what would a well-bred lady be doing that required more coverage for her private parts than a close-fitting floor-length gown provided? Drawers did not come into wide use until crinolines became fashionable in the 1850s, when a gust of wind easily could blow a lady's skirt up over her head. Some of the very fast and fashionable set did wear various kinds of drawers in the Regency, but they were considered a bit risqué. That means we may indeed assume, with a high degree of probability, that Jane Austen went commando. Actually, I do not know what going commando means, but it has something to do with her not wearing panties. Yeah, I mean, I knew that before, I assumed it before, but you never know. Then there's also something about hairstyles. It's really good. For example, you have a whole chapter about who's sitting where on a dinner table at a dinner party, because it's not the way that you could just sit down everywhere. Then who's standing who in line with who at a ball when you're dancing, how to dance, what different card games there are that you could play, what different carriages there are. There's something about our perception of, for example, the Jane Austen novels and the movies. From a modern perspective, it's more like, well, it's a period movie, so there's got to be carriages. It's not that simple, actually. What kind of carriage someone was driving was a sign of how much they earned per year. So when Jane Austen was writing that, and she was making remarks about the transportation, where someone was living, what kind of dresses that they wore, it was a statement about who they are, how much money do they have, where are they in society. And for a modern viewer, it's just like, well, carriage, because it's a period movie. It's not that simple. And it's similar with the dancing etiquette, for example, because I was watching I think it's 2009 Emma, which I actually really like, even though I don't like Emma, but this miniseries, this BBC thingy, that was really cool. Somehow managed to capture my interest. So I was watching that with a friend of mine, and there's this scene where Mr. Elton refuses to ask Harriet to dance. Sure, everyone remembers that. And he didn't understand why that is so terribly rude, because he thought, and from a modern perspective he's right, he had refused her. Like, not directly, but he had not wanted to marry her, even though she had feelings for him. And nowadays you would say, well, it would be really awkward and strange and uncomfortable if I would force myself upon that girl now. Even though I rejected her before, I know I just came back and I had this really silly wife and stuff. But back in the time, it was terribly rude that he was walking around the dance floor looking for a partner, and as soon as he saw that she was available and that she didn't have a partner, him being a gentleman would mean that he would have to go and ask her to dance because it's a polite thing to do. But he refused it, and he made sure that all the room noticed what was going on. So he was pretty much publicly humiliating. Sorry. He was publicly humiliating her at this point. And a modern viewer wouldn't get it. They would just think, well, she has hurt feelings now, but it's the big deal. Actually, it's public humiliation of the worst kind, but you wouldn't notice that from a modern perspective. So, yeah, it's I can recommend the book for everyone who's interested in the era or in Jane Austen or just wants to get all these subtle subtext things that are going on. It's a really cool book, and it doesn't really matter if you're already something like an expert on Jane Austen and her time, or if you're just starting to go into that. This I can recommend this for all people who are interested into Jane Austen and Regency period. And I'm getting hoarse. I will put the link to this in the description thingy. And yeah, I hope I could raise your interest, because this is a very recommendable book.